know how this sounds, but 19-year-old Ruby Ellis bought an abandoned laundromat for $11 because the shelter was full. Her aunt had changed the locks, and the place still had a roof. She wasn't looking for an inheritance. She wasn't looking for some miracle. She just wanted one dry corner in Mason Falls when nobody could tell her to get out. But behind washer 12, taped inside a rusted coin panel, Ruby found a bundle of letters with her name on them. Letters from her mother. The same mother Ruby had been told abandoned her when she was 6. The same mother her Aunt Carol called selfish, unstable, and not worth crying over. And the first letter began with one sentence that made Ruby forget how to breathe. "Baby, if Carol still has you, then she never mailed my letters." Ruby Ellis had spent most of her life learning how to be grateful for things that hurt. Grateful for the couch at her aunt's house. Grateful for secondhand coats. Grateful for rides to school that came with lectures. Grateful for a family that never let her forget she was being kept. Her Aunt Carol was the kind of woman who made cruelty sound responsible. "Look," Carol would say, standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed, "I did what your mother wouldn't. I gave you a roof." And Ruby would nod, because arguing with Carol never changed anything. It only made dinner colder, the house quieter, and the next morning harder. Carol had one son, Mason, who was 24, clean-shaved, and always dressed like he was on his way to something better than the room he was in. He called Ruby charity case when Carol wasn't listening, and sometimes when she was. The night everything broke, Carol accused Ruby of stealing a pearl bracelet from her dresser. Ruby was standing in the hallway, holding a laundry basket, when Carol came out of the bedroom with her face already made up for judgment. "Where is it?" Carol asked. "Where is what?" "My bracelet." Ruby blinked. "I don't know." Mason leaned against the kitchen doorway with his phone in his hand and a little smile on his face. Carol stepped closer. "I'm not gonna lie, Ruby. I'm tired. I am tired of helping people who make me regret it." Ruby looked at Mason. He looked down at his phone. That was when she understood. Not fully, not yet, but enough. "You know what hurt the most?" Ruby said quietly. "It wasn't that you think I stole it. It's that you were waiting for a reason to put me out." Carol's face hardened. "Pack a bag." Ruby laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "It's raining." "Then walk fast." Ruby packed in 9 minutes. 2 shirts, 1 pair of jeans, her work shoes, a toothbrush, the little blue ribbon she had found years ago tucked inside an old birthday card with no signature, and the only photo she had of her mother, Lydia Ellis, sitting on the counter of a laundromat, laughing at someone outside the frame. Mason watched from the hallway. "Don't make this dramatic," he said. Ruby stopped at the front door and looked back. "I wish I was making this up," she said. "I really do." Then she walked into the rain. For 3 nights, Ruby slept under the awning of a closed pawn shop. On the 4th, she found the city auction notice taped to the community board outside the courthouse. Most of it was furniture, broken office equipment, old filing cabinets. Then she saw the last line. Ruby almost walked away. Everybody in Mason Falls knew BrightSpin. The old laundromat had been closed for 8 years. Its windows were filmed with grime. The sign was missing half its letters. Kids dared each other to run inside and touch the back wall. People said it smelled like bleach, mold, and old rain. But to Ruby, it looked like a door. At the auction, only 6 people showed up. A contractor bid on 2 cabinets. A retired man bought a snowblower that didn't start. When the clerk called BrightSpin, nobody raised a hand. Ruby did. The clerk looked over his glasses. "You understand the building needs major cleanup?" "Yes." "You understand the city is not responsible for anything inside?" "Yes." "How much are you bidding?" Ruby opened her palm. Coins and a folded bill sat there. $11. Someone in the back laughed under his breath. The clerk sighed. "Sold." That should have been the strangest part. But after Ruby signed the paper, the clerk frowned at the property folder and pulled out a small manila envelope. "This was stapled to the old file," he said. "No idea why it was never processed." On the envelope were 4 words written in faded blue ink. "For Lydia's girl." Ruby felt the room tilt. Inside was a round brass laundry token, blackened with age, and a note. "Not the office. Washer 12." Ruby stood there with the token in her hand, listening to the courthouse lights buzz overhead. For a second, she thought she was losing her mind, because nobody in that room knew her mother's name. BrightSpin looked worse from the inside. The front door stuck so badly, Ruby had to shoulder it open. The air smelled like wet drywall, rust, and detergent that had died a long time ago. Rows of old washers sat in the dark like dull white teeth. Dryer doors hung open. Folding tables leaned against the wall. A ceiling tile had collapsed near the vending machines. Ruby's flashlight shook in her hand. "Okay," she whispered. "Washer 12, then leave." But the place felt familiar in a way that scared her. Not because she remembered it clearly. She didn't. She had only flashes from childhood. The sound of coins dropping, warm towels in a basket, her mother humming, blue plastic chairs, rain on the front glass. Washer 12 was in the back row. Its white enamel was scratched. Someone had carved initials into the side. The coin panel was rusted shut, but the brass token fit into a narrow slot under the handle. Ruby pushed. Something clicked. The panel opened half an inch. Behind it was a folded cloth pouch, wrapped in plastic and tied with blue thread. Ruby sat on the dirty floor and opened it with shaking hands. Inside were letters. Not 1, not 2. 37 letters, all addressed to Ruby Ellis. The first was dated 10 years earlier. The last was dated only 8 months ago. Ruby picked up the newest one and unfolded it. "My sweet girl, I don't know if Carol gives you these. I don't know if you hate me. I don't know what she told you, but I have written every month because a mother does not stop being a mother just because someone locks the door from the other side." Ruby stopped reading. Her eyes burned so hard she had to press the paper against her chest. For 13 years, Carol had told her Lydia never wrote. For 13 years, Ruby believed silence meant abandonment. But here was the silence, stacked in her lap, unopened. And behind that first bundle was something else. A small key, a bank receipt, a photograph of Lydia standing inside BrightSpin next to an elderly woman Ruby didn't recognize, and a note in her mother's handwriting. If she finds the letters, she is ready for the closet behind the dryers. That was where the story stopped being sad and started getting dangerous. By noon the next day, Carol knew. Ruby had no idea how. Maybe the city called. Maybe Mason checked the county records. Maybe guilt travels faster than paperwork. Carol arrived in a silver sedan with Mason in the passenger seat. The car looked too clean against the cracked sidewalk and boarded windows. Ruby stood in the laundromat doorway with dust on her jeans and the letters hidden inside her coat. Carol stepped out carefully, like the building might stain her shoes. "Ruby," she said, "what are you doing?" "I bought it." Carol stared. "You bought a condemned laundromat?" "For $11. Mason laughed. "That tracks." Carol shot him a look, then turned back to Ruby. "Listen, this is not a game. That building is dangerous. There is a developer interested in that block. You sign it over, and maybe we can get you something. A few thousand. A fresh start." Ruby looked at her. "To be honest, Aunt Carol, you never cared about my fresh start." Carol's mouth tightened. "That place has nothing for you." Ruby watched her face carefully. "What are you afraid I'll find?" Carol didn't answer, but her eyes moved. Not to the office, not to the front counter, to the back row of dryers. It was quick, too quick, but Ruby saw it. And honestly, that scared her more than the letters. That night, someone broke in. Ruby had gone to the gas station for coffee and came back to find the side window cracked open. The front office had been searched. The drawers were on the floor. Old receipts were scattered everywhere. But whoever came in hadn't found the closet. Ruby went to the back row of dryers with her flashlight. There, behind dryer 6, almost hidden by a broken hose, was a narrow service door painted the same color as the wall. The small key from the pouch fit. Inside was a maintenance closet barely wide enough to stand in. There were mop buckets, a fuse box, old detergent crates, and a metal cabinet with a padlock so rusted Ruby thought it would snap. It did. Inside the cabinet was the truth. A deed, a guardianship file, a stack of returned envelopes, and a medical transfer document from Maple Rest Care Center. Ruby stared at the name printed at the top. Lydia Claire Ellis. Her mother was not dead. Her mother had not disappeared. Her mother was alive. Ruby backed into the wall so hard the fuse box rattled. "No," she whispered. "No, no." But here's the thing about truth. It doesn't knock politely. It kicks the door in. The guardianship papers told the story in clean, legal language, which somehow made it uglier. Lydia had signed temporary custody to Carol when Ruby was 6, after a breakdown caused by exhaustion, debt, and a workplace accident that left her unable to care for Ruby for a short time. Temporary. That word appeared everywhere. Temporary custody, temporary care, temporary transfer. But Carol had filed Lydia as unreachable. She had returned the letters herself. She had marked envelopes, refused. She had taken control of Lydia's small disability checks and let Ruby believe her mother had chosen to vanish. And BrightSpin? BrightSpin had never belonged to Carol. It had been left to Lydia by the elderly woman in the photograph, Mrs. Alvarez, the laundromat owner who had treated Lydia like a daughter. The deed transferred the building to Lydia. And if Lydia was incapacitated or unable to manage it, the next named beneficiary was Ruby. Not Carol, Ruby. At the bottom of the file was one final envelope. "For my daughter, when she is old enough to know, I fought." Ruby opened it. Inside was a photograph of her as a little girl sitting in a laundry basket, laughing, blue ribbon tied around her wrist. The same blue ribbon Ruby still carried in her bag. The note beneath it was short. "I didn't leave you, baby. I was trying to get back to you." No one tells you how much betrayal actually hurts when it explains your whole life. Ruby sank to the floor of the closet, surrounded by papers that made her childhood rearrange itself in front of her. Every birthday Carol ignored. Every letter that never came. Every night Ruby blamed herself for not being enough to keep a mother. None of it had been what she thought. By morning, Ruby was at the legal aid office with the deed, the letters, and the transfer document. The attorney was a woman with tired eyes and a coffee mug that said, "World's okayest lawyer." She read for 20 minutes without speaking. Then she looked up and said, "Ruby, this is not just a family secret. This is fraud." Ruby didn't smile. She didn't feel powerful. She felt hollow. "I don't want revenge," Ruby said. "I just want to see my mother." Maple Rest was 40 minutes outside town, a low brick building surrounded by bare trees and a parking lot full of quiet cars. Ruby sat in the lobby, holding the blue ribbon so tightly it cut into her palm. When the nurse led her to the sunroom, Ruby almost stopped walking. Lydia was sitting by the window in a cardigan, thinner than the photo, older than Ruby expected, her hair streaked with gray. She was folding a towel over and over in her lap, smoothing the edges with careful hands. Ruby stood 10 feet away. "Mom?" Lydia looked up. For a moment, there was nothing, just confusion. Then Lydia's eyes dropped to the blue ribbon in Ruby's hand. Her lips parted. "Ruby?" The word broke both of them. Ruby crossed the room and dropped to her knees beside her mother's chair. Lydia touched her face with trembling fingers, like she was afraid Ruby might disappear if she moved too fast. "I wrote," Lydia whispered. "I wrote every month." "I know," Ruby said, crying now. "I found them." Lydia closed her eyes. "She told me you hated me." Ruby shook her head. "She told me you left." Lydia made a sound that wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite a laugh. "Look at you," she whispered. "You got so tall." That was the sentence that undid Ruby. Not the legal papers, not the deed, not the fraud. Just a mother noticing the years she had been robbed of. Carol did not go to prison that week. Real justice almost never moves fast enough for people who have already waited their whole lives. But the guardianship was challenged. The disability payments were investigated. The deed was frozen before any developer could touch the laundromat. Mason, who had pawned the pearl bracelet himself and let Ruby take the blame, stopped posting online for a while. And Carol came to BrightSpin one last time. She stood outside the broken front door in her beige coat, looking smaller than Ruby remembered. "I raised you," Carol said. Ruby stood inside the doorway. "No," she said. "You held me where she couldn't reach." Carol flinched. "I did what I thought was best." Ruby nodded slowly. "For you." Carol looked toward the back of the laundromat. "Are you going to sell it?" Ruby looked at the washers, the cracked floor, the broken dryers, the place where her mother had hidden the only proof strong enough to survive Carol. "No." "What are you going to do with a laundromat?" Ruby looked at the letters in her hand. "Clean what you left dirty." It took 8 months. The roof came first, then the plumbing, then the machines. The city wanted fees. The inspectors wanted changes. The developer made offers. People in town came by to apologize in awkward little pieces, as if sorry could be handed over like spare change. Ruby kept working. Lydia's good days came and went, but on the good ones, Ruby brought her to BrightSpin and let her sit by the front window with a basket of clean towels. Sometimes Lydia remembered everything. Sometimes she remembered only the smell of detergent and the song she used to hum. It was enough. On the day BrightSpin reopened, the old sign had been repainted, but Ruby kept one broken letter from the original sign mounted inside behind glass. She also kept Washer 12. Not working. Not for customers. Preserved. Inside the new front room, there was a shelf with free detergent, a bulletin board for job postings, and every Wednesday night, free laundry for anyone who needed it. Mothers came in with kids. Old men came in with work shirts. Teenagers came in embarrassed, and Ruby made sure nobody looked at them like charity, because she knew what that felt like. Carol never came inside, but one afternoon, a letter arrived from her. Ruby opened it in the back room. It was 6 pages long. She read the first line, folded it, and put it away. Not because she forgave her, because she finally understood she didn't have to rush healing just to make the person who hurt her feel better. That evening, Lydia sat beside Washer 12, running her hand along the cool white metal. "You found me," she said. Ruby knelt beside her. "You left a map." Lydia smiled faintly. "I left a mess." Ruby laughed through tears. "Yeah," she said, "but I'm good at laundry." For the first time in Ruby's life, the sound of spinning machines did not feel like work. It sounded like proof. Proof that dirty things could be washed. Proof that silence could be opened. Proof that a girl who had been called unwanted could own the door, turn the key, and let others in. Ruby Ellis did not become free because she bought a laundromat for $11. She became free because behind Washer 12, she found the one thing nobody in her family could steal anymore: the truth.